Mark Rogers TV with you just minutes after Boise State hung on at home to defeat Washington 16-13, a game that looked to be a total domination by Boise State in the first half. I did not expect to be delivering this type of game recap as Washington almost came back and pulled out the win due to big plays in the passing game, but mostly special teams and rush defense that brought back the Huskies, but they missed the field goal at the gun with 15 seconds left to play. And Boise hangs on the blue turf to win it 16-13. So the way things were going in the first half, Boise dominating with the offensive line and the running game, I thought that would be the highlight. Let's look at the Boise running game in absence of Jay Ajayi, who has moved on to the NFL, and see who they have in place at running back, who is so impressive. And behind this Boise State offensive line dominating Washington up front. So let's start there. You had Jeremy McNichols, who scored a touchdown early in the game. He goes on Twitter by the Weapon 13. They call him McWeapon, Jeremy McNichols. He only rushed the ball 17 times last year. He was huge in the first half. He had 15 receptions last year. He was also a factor in the passing game on this night. And again, difficult to stop early in the game, but Washington brought the linebackers and they supported the run with the safeties in the second half to shut down the Boise State running game. You also saw Devin Demas, who's a junior in the Boise State rush game early in the game. He had 25 carries for $173 last year. And Kelsey Young, the last time we saw him, was in the Foster Farms Bowl wearing the Cardinal red and white. 331 yards rushing for Stanford in 2014. He's a Stanford graduate, transferred to Boise State, playing another year of football. And so it was that Boise State running game against the Washington front. It looked to be a situation where Boise State would walk home with a victory in cruise control, something like 35-7, something in that range. Ryan Finley at quarterback, his first start for the Broncos. The redshirt sophomore threw just 27 passes, mostly in mop-up duty, aside from the Air Force game last year, was the 28th rated pocket passer, according to ESPN, coming out in 2013. He basically did what he needed to do. He relied on the running game, which set up short passing in the flat, and he did his job. But when he needed to throw it downfield, he was given few opportunities and could not connect downfield. And then Washington in the second half basically said, the heck with the pass. We're coming after the run. We're getting beat up between the tackles. Again, mostly by Jeremy McNichols, the sophomore. And Washington discarded the pass, rightfully so, and sold out on the run and stuffed Boise State's running game in the second half. So Finley put into situations where he was behind the sticks, couldn't deliver in the second half. And again, he's going to have to show that he can convert himself into a threat in the passing game, and Boise State's not going to live up to its top 25 billing and challenge the big boys if Finley does not develop and they don't cut him loose, because the running game is not going to be that dominant. The running game showed tonight that if a decent defense loads the box and comes after Boise State, that they can't run it down their throats. Washington, again, selling out in the second half against the run. They got back in the football game thanks to a Boise short punt. A field goal resulted for the Huskies. Then it was the tremendous play by Dante Pettis, brother of Austin Pettis, who's now playing for the San Diego Chargers. Son of Gary Pettis, former outfielder for the Angels and the Tigers. I remember him, Gold Glove center fielder. 77-yard punt return. It was dynamic. He was boxed in. He beat defenders to the corner, and he outraced the coverage. 16-10 at that point in Washington, despite all the offensive ineptitude, was back in the game. Okay. Kelsey Young fumbled. That was punched out by a Washington defender. Joe Mathis with a recovery. Jadon Mickens had a blocked punt that set up Boise State backed up at its own 27. Jadon Mickens for Washington, the wide receiver. That led to another field goal to make it 16-13. Washington continues to stuff the Boise State run. They don't trust Finley to convert on third down. Meanwhile, let's focus on the other side of the football to the Washington offense. KJ Carta-Samuels should stay out of the game. He's not a passing threat. I don't understand teams that opt for the dual threat quarterback unless he is a Michael Vick second coming. Otherwise, he's just a little bit more mobile. He presents some mobility, and he can run. But against top-flight defenses with speed, a Carta-Samuels who cannot, at this point, they don't trust him to pass at all, doesn't present a threat. Keep Jake Browning, the true freshman, in the game. Did you see this kid's numbers out of high school? He was the all-time leading touchdown passer in the history of California high school football. 229 touchdown passes in 3 seasons. That's crazy. That's like 80 touchdown passes per season. I think he threw 91 as a senior. Jake Browning completed his first 5 passes. You're talking about the 5th-rated pocket passer according to ESPN coming out of high school football. And again, like Finley, they didn't want to cut him loose. They had to on the final drive of the game. So Washington gets it back at 16-13. At its own 34, there was a $1.59 remaining. Browning converted a 3rd and 10, a 2nd and 15. He looked very comfortable knowing that he had to wing it out of the shotgun, empty backfield, and he went to work. He did take 2 sacks, and there was a holding penalty on a play that they got out to the wide receiver Mickens and converted, or seemed to have converted that play to a first down. They would have been at the Bronco 20-yard line, but the holding penalty brought it back, and that was pretty much it at that point, although they did convert another play to get Cameron Van Winkle close. Washington fans had to feel somewhat confident that he could convert 22 of 26 last season, but he just missed the right upright in missing with 15 seconds left to play. 46-yard miss. Again, 22 of 26 last year. So that's the take on this game. Ryan Finley, his first start on the Boise State side. Jake Browning, I saw more growth out of Browning against adversity for Washington, especially when he had to deliver on that last drive and led a decent drive to get them to field goal range and a shot at overtime. Boise State lines it up against BYU on the road next week. They will need, most likely, to loosen up the passing game to support the run and not try to run it down people's throats for 4 quarters. The way Washington's offense was performing most of the night, it made sense that Boise State felt as though it could run it, play conservative, play safe, and win this game, but they almost got burned. Washington looked like the 4-win expected team that we've been thinking about for the entire offseason in losing the tremendous talent of NFL defensive players. Consider that in the first 42 picks of the NFL draft, Washington had 4 defensive players selected with those picks. You're talking Danny Shelton, Shaq Thompson, and company, also Marcus Peters in that group. Again, Boise State taking on BYU on the road. Washington's got a date against Sacramento. And this Washington team, with Jake Browning at quarterback and with the defensive effort that we saw, I don't want to get too excited about the defensive effort, considering they sold out on the run and Boise State presented little outside threat downfield. They won't be able to do that against most of the teams they face in the Pac-12 with one of the better and more difficult schedules of anyone in the country. I believe I have it rated somewhere in the top 20 or 25 in college football. Chris Petersen lost 12 games at Boise State. He's already lost 7 at Washington, 8-6 last year. He loses the opener here. Need to hear from you. Washington, Boise State, this game and the prospects going forward right here on Mark Rogers TV.